Hi friends. We're all used to thinking of landscapes. And often when we think of a landscape, we think of it visually. But I like to also think of something called a soundscape. And a soundscape opens us up to another dimension of life, one that we're often missing. Because we tend to rely so strongly on our vision, we often miss out on the world of sound. But today, I'm going to introduce you to a concept that I think will make the world feel a little bit richer. Now, the idea of a soundscape is pretty simple. Every environment has its own sounds, and every aspect of an environment has its own sounds. Intriguingly, we're learning that there are sounds that our ears don't even hear, sounds that insects, even plants, make. But when it comes to the soundscapes that we can hear, well, some are very obvious. As you can imagine, a seashore sounds very, very different than a desert, but it gets more intriguing when we get more subtle with things. With a little bit of hearing observation, we can begin to tell the difference between the bird song in a forest and the bird songs in the fields. Different species tend to frequent those areas, and when they're calling, we hear something very distinctly different. One of my favorite ways to think of soundscape is with the sound of our footfalls. Our footfalls sound very different depending on where we're walking, of course. And a fun experiment is to see the soundscape of a path as opposed to the soundscape that's right next to that path when you're walking. In this way, we can learn to navigate a path even when blindfolded or in the pitch dark. But perhaps my favorite way to experience the soundscape is with the sound of plants, and trees in particular. Let's listen to 3 different trees in the autumn. One is a maple, one is an oak, and one is a white pine. And of course, this is coming through an electronic medium. So if you go out and try this yourself, I think you'll find that the voices are very distinct. This greatly deepens our relationship with nature because we don't just have to listen to these trees in the autumn when they're making these sorts of sounds. They have their own sounds in the summer. And even in the winter, when the wind is moving through branches that are bare, we can hear the difference between these trees. To experience our soundscapes, all we have to do is tune into them. My favorite way to do it is to sit down somewhere and close my eyes and listen. What stands out? Where I am right now, there's this whooshing sound behind me that stands out as the primary sound. And when I open my eyes, I can look back and say, oh, this is the voice of white pine. Off to my left is that maple, and it's speaking its own language. So I can look over and see, that's that maple. There's other more subtle sounds. The grasses, an oak way over there, some rose bushes in this direction, a few birds, goldenrod and thistle that make their own sounds not too far from me. All of these things make up the soundscape. And by practicing that simple exercise, closing my eyes, listening to the sounds that stand out, and then getting more and more subtle, looking around me, identifying those sounds, I can start to become aware of another part of what makes a white pine a white pine. And of course, we can bring all of our other senses into this. White pine is not just a visual thing, and it's not just an auditory thing. There's a taste to white pine, and a taste to different parts of white pine. There's a texture. The more of my senses I engage with the pine tree, the more I start to get a full feeling of who white pine is and of my connection and relationship with that being. Share in the comments if you are aware of your soundscapes, and if so, what some of your favorite parts of those soundscapes are in your environment. Thank you for watching, my friends. Love to you all.